Hello everybody, and welcome to today's episode of D&D Horror Stories. In today's episode, we have a story about a player that wants to know everything coming up in a game, so reads ahead, but gets caught. Then we have a story about a DMPC so annoying that it completely destroys the game, and much more. But first, a message from Nipsey.
Subscribe and click the bell. I really like this window.
Thanks, bud. But with the preamble out of the way, let's get right into these stories. Player Metagames claims it's not cheating, then rage quits. By Reddit user Princess Ariel. In 2020, I ran Rime of the Frost Maiden, which will also be my last time GMing, ever granting me a huge sense of paranoia. My game was incredibly popular because the listing on Roll20 was all for paid GMs a week before release, whereas I was the only free listing. I had over 140 applicants due to everyone being home for COVID lockdown and assorted through 200 direct messages until what I believed were to be perfect applicants. Drin, half-elf drow, friends with the problem player, revealed to be metagaming too. Bastion, wolf tribesman barbarian, friend of mine who has 6 years of GMing experience. Xanath, satyr druid, a nice girl. Melvin, gnome, and the ASMR problem player. Coslin, ASMR eldritch knight, who was also revealed to be metagaming in private voice chat after sessions with Melvin. To start from the beginning, I had styled it to recite the Icewind Dale poem of the Frost Maiden as a prelude, just as a charming way of opening before introductions, to which Melvin mysteriously replied, obviously fully knowing what the poem actually does. "You do know that you have the Icewind Dale poem on the screen, right?" After the first session, I asked Melvin what he meant by that, and asking if he had played Rime before, or have been reading ahead. Drin, whom I had no idea was friends with Melvin, stepped in and said to defend him, "Oh no, he just meant that he thought the document was important." Right. For a bit more context, I specifically said before the first session, I want you to play a character that you're passionate about, rather than what you feel the party needs, and grant yourself a purpose to permanently glue yourself to the party. Lo and behold, after session 3, Melvin asked to switch to a female ASMR paladin from a gnome rogue, to which I ask, why? He goes into a rant about how his character feels like he would abandon the party, and that he's bored of playing a rogue, and then asked to occasionally switch between the two. I of course said no to him switching, and reminded him that it was his responsibility to play a character he loved rather than this, but I did grant his switch to paladin. It was the most obnoxious, loud female paladin who made a point to speak over those she disagreed with, who then asked to start a love story with Drin. 3 people, Zenith, Coslin, and Bastion, had messaged me, saying how uncomfortable they were with Melvin directing the plot however he wanted, as well as Melvin attempting to tell Zenith how to perform her turn. "Heal Drin! Don't use your short bow, use your cantrips. Don't you have Moonbeam?" Of course, as part of his character. Things finally hit ahead when we entered a kobold-filled cave. I had felt unarmed kobolds were too weak for a level 4 party, and had decided to place 2 animated armors in a part of the mine. When the party encountered them, Melvin finally dropped his facade and revealed to everyone, "GM, those aren't supposed to be here." Everyone grew quiet before I promptly kicked Melvin out of the Discord, out of the Roll20 game, and out of my hair, before Drin decided to join him. Coslin, feeling guilty, revealed that after the second session, Melvin invited Drin and Coslin to a Discord call where they read through the entire module together and made plans as to what to face together as a group. Melvin then messages Bastion, my friend, saying he had fun playing with him and he felt that he wasn't cheating because he was only reviewing what they've been through so far. A lie Coslin quickly told me about, to which I exposed him with screenshots in their group direct messages before he blocked Coslin and faded into obscurity once again. I don't know why people feel the need to cheat, even ever so obviously. All in all, I lost my passion for about a year after that, before continuing as a player, forever paranoid. I think I still am a little paranoid to this day, but I'm hopeful of my future in tabletop. I'm on OP's side here. I too don't understand why anyone would want to cheat in a game like D&D. What's the point in even playing then? Plus, why look everything up in the module and spoil everything for yourself? It'd be like looking forward to a movie, and just before going to the theater, you look up spoilers for it. Half the fun in tabletop RPGs is being surprised by things that happen, and then working together as a team to figure out a way around it. Hopefully, this experience doesn't ruin the aspect of DMing for OP forever, and they eventually try the DM seat yet again. Let's move on. The 40-year-old horror story that backfired spectacularly, by Reddit user R. Dorothy Wainwright. Hi all, here's the awful tale of my very first D&D session, the kind that can sour a tabletop RPG newbie for life, and too often does. But in my case, it blew up in that guy's face. August 1980, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 1st edition. You know, the age of Gygaxian dinosaurs. I dropped by my best friend's place that fateful afternoon, see a couple of my tiny handful of nerd friends at the kitchen table, a pile of strange hardcover books, and random folders scattered about. And dice. Lots and lots of dice. They are dice, right? Screwy looking things. So Pete, the DM, gives me the Cliff Notes version of what D&D is, and since they have a spare minute, Pete agrees to help me draw up a bare bones fighter to get a feel for the game. Fred pulls a pre-rolled thief out of a folder, so I'm not going in alone. Pete is winging a quick and dirty demo dungeon for me, but it's clear that I'm already hooked. God, this is so cool, I'm thinking to myself. We open one door, and we're face to slime with a gelatinous cube. We're level 1, and I have no effing clue what I'm looking at, but Fred does. And, in classic that guy fashion, he shoves me inside and slams the door behind me. In retrospect, Pete was obviously pulling punches, and I managed to stagger out with 1 or 2 HP left. There was a door on the opposite side of the room, and there was Fred, who glibly gave me a spiel. I was just coming round the back door so we could surround it. Yeah, right, jerk. And pray tell how you knew how to find it in an unmapped dungeon. But here's where the backfire comes into play. I set aside my irritation and focused on how much fun the game itself was. I came back, and within a year, I was DMing. 2 years after that, I started my first real campaign, the first of 18 over the next 4 decades, 2 states, and 5 gaming groups. Sorry, Fred, you were not going to get rid of me that easily. Well, at least this story had a happy ending. OP definitely experienced that guy back when that guys were still just in the prototype stage. Thankfully, OP was already hooked with the game concept alone, and didn't let Fred ruin what sounds like a decades-long hobby for OP. Let's move on. DM sets up interesting world building, but ignores it for hours by holding us hostage to a terrible NPC. By Reddit user Josh Scorcher. I kinda feel bad posting this here, because I parted with this DM on good terms, and he was a really nice guy. But it was such a miserable experience that I need to vent. I had joined a group made up of forever DMs. The guy organizing it thought it would be a fun idea, and I thought so too. I thought, at the very least, people would make an attempt to work with each other because, hey, we've all been there and had to wrangle an unruly party, so we might be a little more agreeable than your average party. And it turns out, that was the case. The party gelled relatively well, all things considered. Overall, pre-game was pretty good. DMs spent a good amount of time talking about the origin of this world, and what our place was in it. In this world, the great heroes failed to defeat the BBEG, and their descendants were marked permanently. All party members were descendants of them, and were told that the people would instinctively hate us due to the mark. He also warned us that players might die and he wouldn't go easy on us. So, dark fantasy post-apocalyptic. I'm usually not much for a grim dark atmosphere, but I was ready to give it a go and step out of my comfort zone. I carefully built a character that I felt could both help in healing as well as damage. I ended up with this quirky but solid half-orc Sorcerer build, trained in survival. Game day came. The story started, and things got a little weird pretty quick. We entered a local tavern, asked for some rumors or quests, and people were fairly accommodating. I thought that we were cursed to be hated. I know it seems like a weird thing to complain about, but I was ready for at least an insult to be tossed at us, or something to keep the world building consistent. Heck, we didn't even have to do any diplomacy checks to get information. So we get our quest, and in drops a paladin NPC named Phil. And this is where everything goes sideways from weird to WTF. Phil starts saying things like, "Oh, thank the gods, I am blessed, so very blessed to be here. The blessings have happened." I'm not joking. Every other sentence, he used the word blessed. It became very clear, very quick, that Phil was a joke NPC, intended to be a stereotype of a youth pastor. Not a terrible idea for an NPC, but he felt very out of place in the world that the DM had set up. And Phil would not shut up. Anytime the players wanted to do something, Phil interrupted with another blessing statement, like, "Me. Okay, I'm trained in survival. I should be able to find food to subsist." Phil. "Oh, the gods have blessed you with wisdom. Praise! Thank you for this blessed bounty before us." Fighter. "Alright, I did the bulk of the damage to the ice wolves that attacked us." Phil. "Oh, the gods have blessed your martial ability. Our journey is sacred and blessed to succeed." I even tried to give DM the benefit of the doubt and tried to engage Phil seriously in RP. My Sorcerer grilled Phil on his theological beliefs because they seemed so shallow and so insincere that my character suspected Phil to be a liar. But it really didn't go anywhere, and I felt like I was talking to a brick wall with a magic mouth spell designed to say the word blessed. I wanted to leave Phil behind, trying to justify the decision in character by saying that my Sorcerer doesn't trust him. But Phil, somehow, was able to follow us despite all agreeing to ditch him. "Oh, I was worried when I couldn't find you, but the gods blessed me and gave me guidance to find my way to you. I am so blessed, and the gods smiled upon our blessed journey." Every time he said the word blessed, which was often, I felt I was being conditioned Pavlov style to punch something when I heard it. It honestly felt like we were being held hostage for 2 hours for some sort of inside joke, and I wasn't the only party member who found Phil insufferable. As far as attempting to kill us, we were dropped in the middle of a frozen tundra and had to survive the ice, but my character's fire magic, healing magic, as well as survival training kinda negated everything he threw at us. We had a little bit of combat, but DM apparently designed it around us being exhausted or taking damage from the cold, so no one got seriously hurt. With the way that the DM hyped it up, I was really ready for a challenge. The only real challenge was how many times we could tolerate Phil saying the word blessed before we killed him. The threshold is inconclusive. Phil still yet lives. After the game, I told the DM that I wouldn't be returning for another session, and laid out my problems. He seemed to take them in stride, and we parted on friendly terms. Yeah, that sounds like it could be a fun and funny NPC to pop up every now and then, but for that character to be constantly with the party and interrupting roleplay with his antics, I would probably get tired of that too. Hopefully, that DM contacts OP again since they left on good terms, and they can play in another game together sometime, or even just continue that one without Phil being around all the time. And if that would happen, I would call that a blessing. And you know what else would be a blessing? If you could drop a like on this video, as it does really help out a lot. Right, Alice? Anyway, let's get to the last story of the day. Perverted Woman's Depraved Character Idea by Reddit user Grisver. This took place about 6 years ago. One of my friends was DMing D&D for the first time. She spent over a year lovingly crafting an elaborate homebrew world. Only myself and another mutual friend could play in person, so she found a couple more players over Discord who wanted to join in a hybrid online and in-person game. It's important to note that the story started in a small, remote human village, just farmers and maybe a few shopkeepers. Our DM didn't forbid us from playing a non-human or someone who wasn't from that town, but she said that if we wanted to do that, we had to come up with a plausible explanation for how they ended up there, and we all needed to know how our characters fit into the small community. One of the Discord players was a woman in her late 30s that none of us had ever met. We were all 19 to 22 at the time. She proposed her idea for a character, a young half-elf man. I don't remember the class. She repeatedly described how short, slender, androgynous, frail, and tragically beautiful he was. Despite being 20 years old, he looked to be about 13. And his role in the community? He was a prostitute who lived in a room above the tavern, who all the repressed older gay men in town could go vent their frustrations onto his body. She described how, every night, the sounds of moaning and sometimes crying could be heard through the ceiling of the tavern. Also worth noting that myself and the other in-person player are both queer men. The DM just looked at us with a deer-in-the-headlights expression and said, nothing like that would exist in this town. She briefly muted this lady and asked the in-person players what to do. We told her in no uncertain terms that not only were we not cool with anything resembling that character, we weren't cool with that player either. The DM was just like, yep, roger that, and kicked the woman out. The game ended up being amazing. We played for about a year, and my friend turned out to be one of the best DMs I've ever played with. Yeah, it sounded like that lady just wanted to play a fetishized and stereotype-filled character, and the fact that she wanted this already young elf to look even younger was a bit much, especially with the way she described the sounds at night. OP later stated in the comments of the post that they had all agreed before the game started that it wouldn't include any sexual assault or pedophilia, and it seemed like this lady was just trying to find a loophole around that to sneak that stuff in. So yeah, I would say the DM made the right call of kicking her right then and there. At least it was just a stranger from the internet that the DM could just get rid of, and not someone sitting at the table. And I'm glad to hear that the campaign went on to be one of OP's best ones. Do you have a story that you would like to be shared on the channel? If so, be sure to post a link in the comments, post it to the d&Ddoge subreddit, or even feel free to hit me up on Twitter. As always, I appreciate all of you, and hope all of your rolls are natural 20s. Until next time.